the shop is now. So we lived in that house, and the barn, of course, was full of animals. And we had a closed-circuit camera to one of the stalls to our bedroom because we have lots of babies. We're having lots of babies. And that particular barn, which is his warehouse now, it was where all of our baby animals were. So I had a Jenny, which is a female donkey that was going to have a baby, on camera because she was sick that afternoon, and I was, watching her to make sure nothing happened. Bob was still back then running service calls, so he never got up with an animal. I always got up in the middle of the night. So this particular night, it's like 1:30, and I hear the donkeys. Now the donkeys don't just bray like this all the time. It's because they hear noises or people outside. So I woke up because I heard one of them bray, and I thought, well, I wonder what's going on, and I looked at the camera, which is at the end of the bed, and I thought, geez, I wonder why Bob went to the barn without me, because this man walks into this stall, and because I was kind of, just waking up, and I look over, and there he's snoring away, and I, at this point, smack him and say, Bob, and the guy walks in the stall. He puts his hand inside this donkey, under her tail, and I go, Bob, what's the vet doing here at 1:30 in the morning? Because I'm not quite tracking right at this point. And he sits up, and he said, that's not the vet, call the police. So I'm watching this guy, and he's like grabbing his jeans and looking for a rifle and, running around. And
That's Bob.
That's Bob, meaning Bob. That's Bob.
And my eyes are getting bigger as the man drops his pants and starts to do the donkey. She's not wanting this to happen, so she's walking around and he's trying to keep up, and I'm just freaking because
Let the record show that it's a female donkey.
Yes. It was. And I said, so I called 911. To me, it was an emergency, I don't know if anybody else thought it was an emergency. So I called 911, and I'm looking for the words because the words I was thinking were not something I wanted to blurt across the police scanner. And I said, there's
all this heavy traffic on the police.
I said my name. I said, this is Leslie, and most of the police know me, and I figured the dispatcher would, and I said who I was, and I said, there's a man in my barn sexually molesting my donkey. And it was like, yeah, right.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
That's her.
Yeah. They were, and he goes, right, Leslie, what you been drinking? I mean, this is our conversation. I says, no, I'm telling you, there is a man in my barn doing this, and he doesn't believe me. So like the third time I says, look, Buster, there's a man in my barn, And I said, Bob's out there with a gun, and I want people here now. And then it's like silence. He goes, just a minute, So he hangs up, which at this point I find out he's like yelling it through the whole, jail and everything. And I had, in less than 10 minutes, there were 5 carloads of cops there.
They all wanted to see.
That's all.
So the dispatcher is on. He says, well, how do you know this? And I said, well, I got it on camera. And he says, you are taping this, because he is, and, which I was not. And he said, well, what's he doing now? So I'm like telling him what he's doing, the whole time. And he said, stay in the house, because he's believing me at this point. And when Bob was out there, and now it was down in the bank part, so we used to walk down a little hill and then turn to the right, and then we could go in. Well, I had an old pony in there. It was about 32 years old, and he always had this little soft knicker when you left the barn and you didn't give him something to eat. He loved food, or a treat of some kind. He did this little knicker. So Bob knew when the guy was finished. Well, of course, I knew the guy was finished because I saw this. And he was done. He left the stall. He never pulled up his pants. I'm not kidding. Below his ankles, walks out of the stall. Now, I can only see the stall. And I don't know if he's got friends. I don't know who else is in there. And I don't know what else he's done.
Apparently so. A barn full of them.
Other friends. And so I hear Bob, because he knows he's coming out because the pony made this little nicker. So he's holding him with the rifle. And the guy is spilling his guts like he'd been doing this. He'd been doing this, he's done it all along. And he said, well, I've never heard any. And he went through all the animals we had in there. So he was very familiar. So it made,
way with every
yeah,
one of them.
he was mad just because he knew he'd been there even more before. He wouldn't let him move. He wouldn't let him pull his pants up or anything. So he's yelling at him, and I'm so upset because I can't see anymore. I don't know if it's him and a whole bunch of guys, or so my heart was beating so hard I thought they were running down the road. That's how loud it was in my chest. And I said, oh my God, they're running down the road. And he said, which way are they going? I go, wait, no, it's just me. It's my heart. And he said, stay on the phone, Leslie. I said, no, I'm going outside. And he goes, stay on the phone. And of course, I threw the bed on the phone, or the phone on the bed, and I went outside because I did, I like to be involved. So
No comment.
I can edit. I can edit it out later.
He's standing there, and the guy's standing there with his pants around his ankles, and I said, it's okay, the police are on their way, and the guy's like freaking because he can't even believe that we called the police on him, because he didn't hurt anything, and
Hurt her feeling.
then, it was just a minute or two. They were there. We had state police, city, county, everything, and Bob's still holding the rifle on him when the cops came, and still had his pants were still down, and they just threw him against the wall, and finally let him pull his pants up, and then they didn't know what to do with him after that because they're in Indiana. And that year,
Well, but didn't the policeman identify him? Knew who he is?
well, yeah, it was his birthday that day. His name was Nathan Shrivers. They had just stopped him downtown.
It's gonna be on you.
His name is Ned.
He had urinated on the sidewalk outside of the Heidelberg down in Huntington, and they didn't arrest him. And then he was riding his bike because he didn't have a license because he was an alcoholic. So he knew how to get into the barn. We had security lights everywhere. He knew how to come in and not trip a light because there wasn't a light tripped or anything. And
Wow.
so that's what he did. And they sat, and Lindsay was a baby. It's that long ago, and we had to get her up and go to the police station
Don't worry.
and do our report. And she knocked over everything in the jail, I think. All the waste baskets, everything. But we come back, there's still 3 carloads of cops sitting in the driveway because they don't know what to charge him with. Because in Indiana, it's not against the law. At that time, it wasn't against the law to do that to an animal, So anyways, I said, well, if I knew they were going to stay that long, I'd have just left her in bed. They could have,
What's her?
wasn't a big
She's
deal.
safe.
So the only thing they could charge him with was trespassing. So the next day, they take him to court, and this went through Huntington all night long. Everybody was burning up the phone lines. We weren't because it was still stressful for us. He was there, and we were trying to sleep, and we were laying there, and I looked at him, and I said, this gives a whole new meaning to getting a piece of ass. But anyway, we laughed. And
What did he tell the judge?
the judge says, why would you do something like this?
Here comes the punchline.
And he said, it's better than I get at home. And he lived with his mother and a flock of sheep. So he didn't have to bend over that way. So I guess that's the story. It was on Bob and Tom, which is a crazy radio station we have out of Indianapolis. Had I been more familiar, I would have got involved in that too.
Yeah.